While most of Canada is sitting down in front of the TV to watch the Blue Jays try to win a World Series against the Dodgers in Game 6 in Toronto, we, of course, here at PuckTalk Montreal are just loopy enough to sit down and talk about tomorrow night's matchup between the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens at the Bell Center. Let's talk some puck. Hey gang, Costa here from PuckTalk Montreal. Thank you for joining the show. And before we even get started about tomorrow's game analysis, I want to talk about something that came across my desk today as I was doing things. And really, again, it's one of those things that irks me because it's about the second line center. And I know last night I said I wasn't going to talk about it. I'm not. But very quickly, there was a rumor in the summer, around the end of June, that the Rangers might be interested in dealing Vincent Tkachuk. Now, to start the season, Vincent Tkachuk has been injured, so he hasn't really seen the ice. So today, there was some talk about the Canadiens possibly entertaining the notion of trading for Jakob Chychrun. Chychrun, 32 years old, making $5.75 million a season for another 3 years. Why would I even look at that? Why am I going to look at a guy who's coming off of injury to come and join a team that is firing on all cylinders? I asked that question yesterday about Kadri and other rumors that went around about the 2C, and I'm asking it again. Why do we keep doing this? Stop. Enough said. Vincent Tkachuk is not somebody the Canadiens are going to look at. They don't need another right-handed center. Move along. Next, please. Now, let's talk lineups. And before we talk lineups, we talk Insta-Customs. Instacustoms.com is Canada's highest-rated print shop with over 3,000 Google reviews and a 4.9-star rating. They offer direct-to-garment printing on all your favorite clothing, along with coffee and travel mugs, and they even offer embroidery. Habs won a Stanley Cup? You can win too on Stanley Street at Instacustoms.com. Now, here's the thing about the lineups in Ottawa. They're deep. Even without Captain Brady Tkachuk, you need to be careful of what the Ottawa Senators bring to the table. Take a look at this lineup. It starts with Nick Cousins up top along with Tim Stützle and Drake Batherson. Second line, Ridley Gregg, Dylan Cousins, David Perron. Third, Michael Amadio, Shane Pinto, Claude Giroux. And the fourth line of Curtis McDermott, Lars Eller, and Fabian Zetterlund. Now, here's the thing about those lines. They're all dangerous. Just like the Montreal Canadiens have 4 dangerous lines. So the lineups are very similar. Of course, the big piece, Brady Tkachuk, their captain, missing for the Ottawa Senators, whereas Montreal, up front at least, is in full health, minus Patrick Laine. But as you look at that lineup, especially down the middle, there's a lot of depth there between Cousins, and Shane Pinto. Very often, when you look at the score sheet, some names are always there. Stützle normally gets there. Pinto, always there. In fact, I think in the preseason he scored 2 against Montreal. You always get a little bit of Drake Batherson thrown in there along with some Claude Giroux. So there's plenty of talent to go around when it comes to the Ottawa Senators. So the Canadiens have to be mindful of that talent. And when you look at the back end, that doesn't change very much either. On defense, they've got Jake Sanderson and Artem Zub, Thomas Chabot and Nick Jensen, and Tyler Clevin and Jordan Spence. Now, not nearly as deep as the Montreal Canadiens' top 4, but their top 3 in Zub, Sanderson, and Chabot is among the best in the National Hockey League. So there's no doubt that they measure up, at least, to the defense of the Montreal Canadiens. And then when you take a look at goaltending, you're talking about Linus Ullmark starting for the Ottawa Senators, and of course, Levi Merilainen being the backup goaltender for the Sens. Linus Ullmark always plays well against Montreal, whether it was back in his days with the Boston Bruins or whether it's now with the Ottawa Senators. He's always up for those games, and he always seems to be emotional. So that's going to be one of the keys to victory for the Montreal Canadiens. And before we talk about those keys, let's talk about cheapesttshirts.ca. Cheapesttshirts.ca has men's, women's, and children's t-shirts, all sizes, hoodies too, with over 1,000 products to choose from. Anything you need for merchandise or the best deals on everyday clothing, cheapesttshirts.ca is your go-to source. Buy today, ship tomorrow, cheapesttshirts.ca. So, of course, the goaltending battle is the number one thing as we start off these 5 points to Canadiens' victory. Sam Montembeault has to be better than he's been. He needs to get back to the Sam Montembeault that we know and love. A guy who allows less than 2 goals a game and who gives the team a chance to win. He hasn't done that yet this season, and he's really been much maligned for it. I, for one, am always on him as far as his goaltending is concerned because I know he can be better. There's a lack of focus. There's a lack of concentration and a complete lack of technique. We know that he's been working with Eric Raymond while Jakub Dobeš has picked up the slack in goal over these past few games. So let's see what he brings to the job on Saturday. And I know a lot of people are questioning the decision by Marty St. Louis to put him in there. But if you don't do it now, you're never going to be able to do it because the more Jakub Dobeš wins, the less confidence the fan base is going to have in Sam Montembeault. So get him in there, see what he can do. Allow Eric Raymond the opportunity to review what they've done so far and see how it works. See whether or not he has to adjust and move forward from there. That's the only way he's going to get better. So give him a chance. Let's see what he can do. On the other side of things, how do the Canadiens get to Linus Ullmark? Well, for lack of a better term, get your ass in his face. He hates traffic. He hates people in front. He hates rebounds. So get people in front of the net, take plenty of shots, force them to create rebound opportunities for Montreal, and get in there and jab your sticks in there. Like Reggie Dunlop said in slap shot, stick him in the gut. That's what you want to do. Get those sticks in there, force the Ottawa Senators to try to get you out of the front of the net and get under Linus Ullmark's sin, because we know one thing. When Ullmark gets emotional, his game suffers. So that's going to be number one, win the goaltending battle. Number two, it's got to be to win special teams. Both teams are dangerous on the power play, but the Montreal Canadiens are at 28%, sitting 7th in the National Hockey League right now as far as power play production is concerned. That's the highest they've been in decades. So we want to continue on that vein. But also, they need to make sure they stay out of the penalty box and allow the penalty kill to be as fresh as possible. The Canadiens are going to take penalties against Ottawa. There's no two ways about it. They always do. Why? Because Tim Stützle likes to dive, because guys like Nick Cousins like to get under people's skin and force them to get emotional and take penalties. For Montreal's thing, they need to make sure that they don't. Control your emotions. Stay out of taking those stupid penalties, the retaliatory penalties that the Ottawa Senators thrive on. Right? Because the more power plays you give them, the more dangerous the Ottawa Senators will be. Make sure you control the neutral zone. And what do I mean by that? If there's one thing the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens have is speed. And both teams like to generate speed through the middle of the ice and through the neutral zone. So whichever team is able to control that neutral zone area and mitigate how much speed a team can create through the neutral zone is going to be the team to win this hockey game. Both teams like to play a transition game and attack off the rush. That is their bread and butter. They're not the team that's going to bring the puck into the zone and cycle you to death. That's not either one of their styles. They both like to attack off the rush. They both like to take shots. They both like to create rebound opportunities. That's what's been successful for them thus far this season, and they're going to continue to do that. So how do the Montreal Canadiens control the neutral zone? Well, it's the same thing that the Ottawa Senators are going to have to do against Montreal, and that is they're going to have to make sure that they limit the amount of space and the gap that they give to the forwards on the Ottawa Senators, angle them towards the boards, and take them out of the middle of the ice, because the minute you allow them to generate speed through the middle, that's when Ottawa becomes extremely dangerous. And the same holds true for Montreal. Montreal, when they get speed through the neutral zone, they attack and they're ferocious when they do it. So whichever team can do a better job of mitigating the speed through the neutral zone for either team is going to win this hockey game, without a doubt. The Canadiens also need to start getting a little bit of depth scoring. Obviously, the Canadiens have been getting scoring from their top two lines, mostly from the Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slafkovsky line, but you need to see a little bit more scoring coming from the other lines. There was a little bit from the Demidov, Kapanen, and Newhook line, but you also need to see a little bit of scoring coming from the bottom two lines, whether it's Veleno, Bolduc, and Kirby Dach, or whether it's Evans, Anderson, and Gallagher. Now, it's not that they haven't gotten their chances. We saw Kirby Dach get an excellent chance in the last game where he cut across the front of the net. So they're trying to get those pucks in the net. So it's not a lack of effort, but those pucks need to start going in. Whether or not that happens against the Senators is going to be extremely important as far as winning the hockey game is concerned. Because the minute you take the Senators off of offense and you have them focus more on their defensive game, they become vulnerable. And that's where the Montreal Canadiens need to get them. And finally, limit the turnovers. The speed at which the Ottawa Senators attack is one of the reasons why the Canadiens last season had so many turnovers. Because any player that has somebody coming after them quickly and ferociously tends to panic with the puck. And when you panic with the puck, you make poor decisions. Poor decisions lead to turnovers. Now, this season, we've been extremely lucky because guys like Noah Dobson and Mike Matheson, who each had over 100+ turnovers last season, seem to have mitigated that this year. Whether or not that continues against the Sens remains to be seen, but they've done a good job so far, and we need to give them the benefit of the doubt. So let's leave it at that. Make sure you win the turnover battle. Make sure you manage the puck well, and good things are going to happen for you. Now, who are the players that we need to watch on the Ottawa Senators without Brady Tkachuk in the lineup? Well, obviously, the offense all flows through Tim Stützle. Everything funnels through him. So if you can limit what Stützle can do on the ice, you limit what the Ottawa Senators can do offensively. Another guy you have to watch is Claude Giroux. Giroux, the shifty veteran. A guy, despite the fact that he doesn't have the same speed or legs that he had when he was younger with the Philadelphia Flyers, he's still a very dangerous forward, as is David Perron. They both are slower than they were in their younger years, but they're both just as shifty. They're both wily veterans, and they know how to put the puck in the back of the net. Giroux wins faceoffs almost 50% of the time, and he gets possession of the puck for his team. So that's where you need to be as far as the Canadiens are concerned. Watch Claude Giroux extremely close. You've got to watch David Perron too. Somehow David Perron always seems to get on the score sheet, as does Tim Stützle, as do Michael Amadio, and where was I going with that? Oh, Shane Pinto. Shane Pinto's a Canadiens killer so far in his career, and I don't see anything different happening tomorrow night. So the Canadiens need to make sure they watch those guys. Along with that, you got to watch the guy that pulls the trigger mostly on the first line, and that's Drake Batherson. He's got a killer shot. Make sure you mitigate that shot. On the back end, Jake Sanderson is one of the elite skating defensemen in the National Hockey League. You need to make sure that you don't allow him to get his wheels going, because the minute he starts to skate and he brings the puck into the offensive zone, it's extremely dangerous. And I mentioned Shane Pinto. He's always been good against the Montreal Canadiens, but another guy who seems to be on the score sheet more often than not against Montreal is Ridley Gregg. If the Canadiens can limit what Ridley Gregg can do, they'll have success against the Ottawa Senators. So, what was the question here that I wrote down? So, what are the matchups that we need to watch? Well, without Brady Tkachuk, Ottawa's attack becomes more of a perimeter attack as opposed to in front of the net being in your face. So, you need to make sure that you assign somebody you trust against Tim Stützle to limit what he can do. And how do you do that? Well, you take a look at the defenseman that we have, and I think the best guy for that job would probably be Mike Matheson. Mike Matheson has the wheels, and he has the defensive ability to be able to take care of Stützle. Less net front chaos and more perimeter pressure. So force the Ottawa Senators away from the front of the net. You know they've got guys like Ridley Gregg, Shane Pinto, Lars Eller, David Perron. They all like to go to the front of the net and wreak havoc against our goaltenders. So make sure you keep them away from the front of the net. Make sure that you match up your lines smartly so that you have the right lines to face off against the Stützle. So you want to have Suzuki's line out there against Stützle. You want to make sure that you have the Jake Allen line out there against Claude Giroux's line. And then make sure that you control the transition game. If the Canadiens can take control of the transition game and force the Ottawa Senators on their heels, then more often than not, they're going to be able to win hockey games. So there you have it. The keys to victory for the Montreal Canadiens. How do I see it? It's going to be a tight game. That's the way I look at it. The Canadiens, do I see them getting on top? Well, the only way the Canadiens get on top is if we see another performance by Sam Montembeault that reminds us that he is the number one goaltender of the Montreal Canadiens. If we don't see that from Monty and Linus Ullmark gets the best of him, well, then there's going to be a lot of questions in Montreal about the goaltending situation. But let me tell you this. If we get that performance from Montembeault, and I believe we are, more likely than not, what's going to happen is that the Canadiens are going to come out on top. Probably a really tight game. Will it go to overtime? Well, if there's one thing I know for certain, the Montreal Canadiens need to make sure they don't go to overtime again. They need to start winning games in regulation. Sure, they won a couple, but we need to see them do it more steadily, and we need to make sure we watch them not only get the lead, not only get a couple of goals to pad the lead, but we need to make sure that they know how to hold on to the lead. Not by changing their game and backing off, but by continuing to attack. If they continue to attack, then the Montreal Canadiens are going to be just fine. Thanks, as always, to our sponsors, InstaCustoms and CheapestT-shirts.ca. Make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell for all the latest and greatest. And we'll see you guys, hopefully, on Saturday night after the Blue Jays win the World Series. Bye for now.